taxes in order to get various kinds of privileges. The empresas de producción social, did not work as a model, partly because nobody knew what they were supposed to be doing, and three of the ministries all had different conceptions of what such an enterprise should be. So they've moved now increasingly to a concept of socialist enterprises, and that concept of socialist enterprises is being slowly worked out, and it was experimented with in the Ministry for the Communal Economy, which has now been merged with the Ministry of Participation to form the Ministry of Communes, and it was experimented in the Agricultural Ministry as well. But one of the most interesting things about it, I find, is one of the people who was working very closely with the concept of socialist enterprises, both within the Ministry of Light Industry, where he was employed, and also in organizing, socialists in a number of states, for the purpose of talking about the characteristics of a socialist enterprise, was the person you saw there in the video talking about the solidarity meat packs. This is a person by the name of Rafael Enciso. And Rafael has just been seconded to the palace to advise Chavez on the whole question of what the characteristics of socialist enterprises should be. So you get these, reversals, but on the other hand, you get some significant hope by some of the changes occurring. As far as the third side of this, socialist triangle, the side of production for communal needs, well, who can know better about communal needs and the needs of people than the people themselves? And that's what the communal councils are all about, which is small units, 200 to 400 families within the urban areas, and they're organized on a basis of the neighborhood assemblies, which are the basic decision-making body, and they deal with questions of participatory diagnosis. What are the problems of our community? What are the ways in which we can solve these problems? How can we order these? Which things can we solve first without trying to get resources from the state, solved by ourselves? Those kind of processes of participatory diagnosis, participatory budgeting occurring within the communal councils remind many people of the process of participatory budgeting in places like Porto Alegre and their various experiments in Brazil, Argentina, and the like. But one of the big differences between those experiments in Brazil, Argentina, and the like, and what's happening in Venezuela is, well, how many people are involved in participatory budgeting in Porto Alegre? Well, it's a unit of 10,000 people. You don't know who's your neighbors are. It's like a reproduction of representative democracy. You elect somebody, you don't see them again. They may come back to report occasionally. That's different from a situation where a communal council has basically the maximum of 1,000 people, 400 families or so. And that means the people who are, involved in discussions, who are your representatives, and they don't call them representatives, they call them voceros, spokespersons, those people are your neighbors. And that's a quite different situation. Now, that process of creating communal councils has been a very uneven one. It's been uneven because in those places where there was significant organization and experience and struggle and activity, those areas, those communities have been ones where the communal councils have worked really well. So if, for example, you had land committees, you had health committees, food committees, etc., in an area, the communal council was formed, and it just simply took on all these previous experiences. Many of the existing committees became subcommittees of the communal council. But there are areas where there were places where there was no history of struggle, no history of activism in the communities at all. And so what happened when they said, let's create communal councils everywhere? Who did it? The Ministry of Participation would come to an area and say, you have to create a communal council. And so, how would it be? Well, you can be the spokesperson for this, it became a completely hierarchical structure in those cases where there was no experience. And that's one of the things that always, I think, has to be recognized, that there's always going to be unevenness. And the problem is trying to create uniformity, and because in those areas where people are not developed, you end up with a hierarchical structure rather than the whole concept, which is, a development from below. Now, the concept of the communal council, they deal with local problems, like the streets in the area, the housing in their area. Many of them were putting forward, proposals to improve the housing. This was especially happening in the rural areas where the communal councils represented 20 to 50 families, most often closer to 20. And they would often put in for grants. They would get money for the process of building houses, let's say to build 10 houses, and then you'd go to these areas to talk to them, and they would talk with pride how they stretched the money for 10 houses to build 14 houses or so by cutting back here through discussions, working together on this rather than having organized workers to do this. So these communal councils are now what's happening is a process of trying to bring together communal councils that have been functioning into larger units where they can deal with problems that transcend individual neighborhoods. And that's the process that is now occurring in Venezuela called the communes. The communes are new forms of organization which will bring together communal councils. Now, they're not going to make the communal councils disappear because, Chavez is very clear. Chavez has said, look, we view the communal councils as a cell of a new socialist state. They will be the basis for the new state. And that's what will happen with the communes. The communes will bring together communal councils and begin to deal with larger problems. The longer-term step will be to bring together communes to create communal cities. So it's a whole process of trying to create an alternate state in the context of a capitalist state, in the context of a state which has the old form. Lots of struggles will be involved, including the struggle against the existing mayors. Most of the mayors control local budgets, and they don't want to lose their power to communal councils and to communes. So you have that struggle happening. But again, there are very interesting